So Keir Starmer, we're here in Estonia on the Russian border. It's a short drive away. How safe is the UK under a Labour government?
Absolutely. Well, there's been an unshakable commitment to NATO ever since NATO was first created, which of course was under a Labour government. This is my second time here to this base. I'm here today to say thank you to the troops, to reinforce Labour's unwavering commitment to NATO, but also, of course, our unwavering commitment to Ukraine. And I've observed, I was here 18 months ago, here today, there's a real driving sense of purpose here with the troops that are here on the front line since that breach of the border into Ukraine just 18 months or so ago.
If you win power, will you increase defence spending beyond 2.12% of GDP?
Well, we will always keep to our NATO commitments. I think what you saw at the end of the last Labour government was 2.5%. So we're clear that the first duty of government is the protection of the country. And so we're very, very clear about that in terms of the resource that must go with that commitment.
And the ambition is for it to increase?
Well, when the last Labour government was in power, it was 2.5%. But, there is a NATO commitment here, which we will always make sure that we maintain.
How far would you be willing to go personally to protect the UK? Would you launch nuclear weapons at Britain's enemies?
I think that the nuclear deterrent is very important to us. Obviously, I'm not going to discuss with you the circumstance in which they may or may not be used, but it is a very important part of the defence of our country that we are strongly committed to, along with our commitment to NATO and to the security of our nation, which is paramount.
But personally, are you willing to launch nuclear weapons?
Well, I believe in the deterrent, but as I say, nobody who aspires to be Prime Minister would discuss the circumstances in which that deterrent might come to be used.
Are you ready for a general election in as little as 19 weeks away?
We are ready for a general election. I've had my whole team on a general election footing for some time now. I think that given the complete state of failure now in the country, there's a real sense that everything is broken, nothing is working, that the sooner that election comes, the better, because for millions of people, they can't afford to wait any longer for that general election.
Is Rishi Sunak scared to go to the country?
Well, I think that, for millions of people, they're living in a cost of living crisis. Their energy bills have gone through the roof. Almost every bill they're paying has gone up. Their income has not gone up. They see a health service which is broken, public services on their knees. They need a general election, and that's why I think the sooner that is called, the better. We're ready for it.
How complete is your election manifesto?
The manifesto I have had
underway?
I've had a mechanism in place for over a year to make sure we have a manifesto when we need it. I'm not going to reveal it to you right now, but
why not?
But we will be absolutely ready. But not for the Labour Party, but for the millions of people who need the change that is desperately needed.
Have you the character to be Prime Minister? Your critics say you flip-flop.
Look, I have experience as a lawyer. I worked in Northern Ireland for 5 years on the Good Friday Agreement, or implementing parts of it with the police service out there. I led a public service for 5 years, the Crown Prosecution Service, and I've now led my party for the best part of 4 years. So clearly, when it comes to tough decisions and strategic thinking and a sense of where we need to go as the country, then I'm ready for that general election just as soon as the Prime Minister actually wants to call it.
Is your family and wife Victoria ready for the scrutiny that will come if you become Prime Minister?
I'm not complacent. I know there's a lot of work still to do. We've got to earn every vote. And I'm not daunted by the decisions that we would have to make if we are privileged enough to come in to serve. I do worry about my family, if I'm honest. I'm very protective of my wife and our children. We don't name our children publicly. We don't have photo shoots with them. And so I am very mindful of the impact it could have on them. Our boy is 15, our girl is 13. These are ages where they're going through huge change, but my aim is to keep protecting them in every way that I can.
Will Labour back Tory amendments to weaken the Rwanda bill next month?
Well, I haven't seen any amendments yet to the Rwanda scheme. We do have to stop the boats coming across. We can't, and the government has lost control of our borders.
Will you say now, I will stop the boats?
Well, look, the government's lost control of our borders. I think the way to stop the boats is to smash the criminal gangs that are running the vile trade of putting people in the boats in the first place. Now, we know that what the operation is. The boats are made pretty much to order now. They're kept in warehouses across Europe, brought to the northern coast of France. When I was Director of Public Prosecutions, we took out terrorist gangs, we took out people smuggling gangs. I believe that we can take out these gangs if we put the political capital to it, make the necessary alliances across Europe and do work with Europol and others to take these gangs out. I want to stop the boats, and I think that the only way to do that is to smash the gangs that are running the vile scheme in the first place. That's where I'd put my energy.
Why won't Labour look at offshore processing centres for migrants?
I think there's a difference between offshore processing and essentially deporting people, which is the Rwanda scheme. The Rwanda scheme is a gimmick, a very, very expensive gimmick. We've paid hundreds of millions of pounds and nobody has gone to Rwanda. Other countries do offshore processing, and that is something, I'll look at any credible option. But I think that at the moment, the single most important thing is to take out the gangs that are taking money to put people in those boats.
What do you think of the new 45p, 48p income tax bans in Scotland? And will tax fall as a percent of GDP at the end of a Labour government?
Well, in Scotland, under the SNP government, people are now paying more for less. And therefore their tax has gone up. But if you look at the record of the SNP in government, it's appalling. And so you've got a version in Scotland of what you got in Westminster, which is people paying more than they've ever paid before for less than they've ever got in return for it. That is not the way that we intend to run the economy if we're privileged enough to be elected into government.
How will you fund spending £28 billion on renewables by the middle of this government?
Well, the most important thing and the number one mission or purpose of an incoming Labour government would be to get economic growth. It's been stagnant for the best part of 13, 14 years. If we'd had economic growth equivalent to the last Labour government, we'd have tens of billions of pounds to spend on our public services without raising taxation. So I would go for growth rather than pulling the tax lever. And I believe in lower taxes for working people.
So will it come down over the 5 years?
Well, for working people, we want to reduce the tax burden, but the key to this is economic growth.
Michael Gove set out his plans this week to build 75,000 more homes, taking the government's target to 300,000 a year. How many more would Labour build?
We've got a plan to deliver 1.5 million homes a year. That's a plan which will be effective because we will take the tough decisions, put the targets back up that are much needed, and you won't get any of this building done without the targets, to knock out the planning restrictions that stand in the way of many of these projects, and to form the partnership, the industrial strategy that's needed with the builders to deliver on this. So we've got a plan for 1.5 million, which is deliverable.
That's over the 5 years.
Over the 5 years, what you've got from the government is a government that has timidly taken down the targets that they did have. That was the Prime Minister just about a year ago, under pressure from his backbenchers. As a result of that, house building under this government will now taper off and fall off a cliff, making it even harder for first-time buyers, and that dream of home ownership is just getting more and more distant.
Is that a year or over 5 years?
Well, the number they put out there is very different to the number actually built, and what they've done is take the target down. So what we're going to now see is home building falling off a cliff so far as the government is concerned. We've got a plan to actually deliver on the promise that we make.
Are you concerned that a company controlled by the UAE is trying to buy the Daily Telegraph? Should the government block it?
Well, look, I think the government is looking into this at the moment, and I think they're right to do that, and we'll wait to see what the outcome of that process is.
Ireland is challenging the UK over its decision to try and give immunity to UK soldiers during the Troubles. Is Dublin right?
I think the government's got this one wrong. I don't shy away from the problem, the challenge. Having worked in Northern Ireland for 5 years, I well understand how difficult this issue is. But to press on with this proposal when there's no political support in Northern Ireland from any political party, and most importantly, when the victims and their families in Northern Ireland are not supportive is in principle wrong for me. So that is why we don't support this proposal, this legislation coming from the government. I don't deny there's an issue that needs to be addressed. This is not the right way to do it.
Pursuing veterans to the courts, is that what Labour wants?
Well, no, of course not. No vexations cases should ever be brought. There are checks and balances in the process. But I think many would say within the military, within the army, that they don't want a special law that applies to them, but to press forward legislation in the teeth of opposition from every single political party in Northern Ireland is really not the right approach in my view.
Should junior doctors accept the government's pay offer? What's your message to families, patients stuck not being operated on this Christmas because of the strike?
Nobody wants these strikes, and I don't want these strikes. There's one way to resolve them. That is for the government to get around the negotiating table and negotiate an outcome here. They failed to do that for months and months and months on end, and patients are paying the price for this. So I say to the government, get on, do that negotiation, and I'm very shocked and concerned that we're still in this position from the government.
Just finally, do you know what RIS is?
I do, but I can't remember. But
it's charisma.
Charisma.
Have you got it?
Well, look, I have led organisations from the front. I led the Crown Prosecution Service through some difficult years, and we came out much better than when I started. I worked in Northern Ireland, made some real progress with the police there. So in terms of inheriting a challenge and improving, then I've got a track record on that. And I just think at the moment, when you've had 13, 14 years of decline, to have a Labour Party led by me offering a decade of national renewal will be music to the ears of all the people that are suffering under this government.
And finally, one wish for 2024, Arsenal to win the league or Labour to win the general election?
I've got to go for, I want to say both, the double of course. I've got to go for the election victory and hope that Arteta does the other bit for me.
And just finally, a message from you for GB News viewers this Christmas.
Happy Christmas to everybody. A peaceful new year, and I hope everybody watching this just has a little bit of downtime in whatever they want to enjoy. But I'd say to each and every person watching, from my family to your family, happy Christmas.
Sir Keir Starmer, thank you.
Thank you.